All right, let's do this.
Welcome first-time listeners and returners to the Sports Deli, where everyone deserves a seat at the table, especially our next incredible guest, who joins us today to talk about the intersection between race and sports, mental health, leadership, equality, social injustice, and white privilege. So grab your favorite deli sandwich or bagel and your favorite beverage, and let's do this together in the Sports Deli. Welcome to the Sports Deli. Along with John and Gordon, I am the third wheel of this podcast, Hoot. And with us today is a very special guest. Barbara Pinson Lash is an African-American woman, a mom, an educator, journalist, student, and she has been with a number of different television stations throughout the country. And she has started her own business, and she's going to tell us all about that. She has some very strong opinions on some of the things going on in our world today, and we're so excited to have you. Without further ado, Barbara, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you all very much. This is pretty awesome, especially seeing that Michigan flag in the background.
Yes, that's right. We're very excited about the Wolverines.
Hey, I got it in early.
You definitely got it in early. Sorry, Gordon. So I want to ask you, we went to high school together, and you've seen a lot of success, and also had to endure things that maybe I didn't even know when we were hanging out as kids in high school. Me, you, and Rick would hang out. And I just want to ask you, what did your upbringing teach you about the path that you eventually chose? Because I don't remember you in particular being involved that much in sports necessarily. Mm-hmm. And you were more on the shy side, to be quite honest with you, from what I remember. And
see, I try and tell my daughter that, and she's like, "No, mommy, you were never shy."
And so, but how I'm just fascinated, even though in our podcast talk earlier from today, I'm just fascinated at the inroads that you've made in some areas in our communities that I wouldn't have expected from you, and talk about being a woman of color, trying to break into the industry and television, especially in some small markets in the South, in Flint, Michigan. It's a remarkable story. You've written a couple of books that I want you to talk about. Obviously this is a podcast dedicated to a number of different things, in particular sports. And we've listened to, we've talked about, as you've listened to a number of our Black Lives Matter podcasts. But talk about your path and how you got to where you are today. I didn't ask you that earlier, as I said. I'm just fascinated to know how you got to this point.
Well, wow, you really took me back there. So, if I haven't said it explicitly yet, thank you so much for what you guys are doing to really just have the conversation up close and personal for us, and so many different perspectives that you're bringing. So thank you for the opportunity. And yeah, I was that shy kid, right? And, I don't know when it shifted. I don't know that I ever thought, okay, I'm shy, I need to break out of this shell. I think it was more that I was just a quiet kid who observed a lot, So some of the things I observed as a kid, you and I, we grew up in Oak Park, Michigan, which was a very multicultural environment. So that was a norm for me. And so when I was growing up, the things I observed is, okay, there's a little bit of difference between how this person and that person may be treated. But overall, we had a baseline that I think was very unique. We were just, I don't know, we seemed a lot more equal. We had equal playing fields compared to what we see today. So I understand.
Did you observe athletes too? Because I don't remember that being a part of your experience at all. And now you're working with some of the top athletes in the world. The whole thing is just mind blowing, to be quite honest with you.
Okay, so that happened in the home. So my mom and my dad are avid basketball, football, and boxing fans.
Wow.
So, back in the day when boxing was on HBO and you basically picked a house, this house was going to have the boxing match this week. And so we were that house on our block that would rotate. And I mean, I can see my mom jumping up now. She's a little 5'2" Asian woman, Asian and Latina, jumping up saying, get him. She was a big Evander Holyfield fan. And, so I observed them just really being engaged. And I really loved how it always brought our families together. So the Thanksgiving Day games were always huge with the Lions, usually playing the Packers way back in the day. And so I just loved how, you're there because you have to, because you're a kid, but I just observed this is like really cool how our families just all kind of come together and they rally around a cause, which is whatever team we're rooting for, always the Lions, by the way. But what I also saw is in the post-game interviews, you would have some players come up and they would struggle to put their story together or share their passion for the game. Maybe they would get, tripped up on words or like their communication, which at that point as a kid, you think they're talking to the entire world. So you're like, okay, why is he struggling here? And I just thought, they have such a huge platform. Maybe, I just started to wonder, why is it that they're struggling? So that's
you go to university. So you go to University of Michigan.
I did. I followed in Carmen Harlan's footsteps. So for you guys, for Gordon and John, you guys are not from Michigan, right?
We're not.
Your loss.
That's right.
She was an African-American news anchor in Detroit, and she became actually the first female $1 million local news anchor, whatever that's worth. But I just used to watch her and think, wow, she's so poised. She's beautiful. She always speaks so empathetically about what's happening in our communities. And I just always thought, like, I want to do that. I want to be that. So I went on and I was that. And over 20 years, I was blessed to be able to be on TV, interviewing people, sharing their stories. But always in the back of my mind, was this like, oh, I'm always watching the games. And after the games, it's like the same thing. Like, oh man, like what's going on?
And it's tugging at you.
Tugging at me. And as I learned how people interview and just the whole idea of being in front of a camera, you start to understand that after a while, it's a couple things at play, nerves, it's just not being used to being in front of that camera and not having the practice.
Upbringing.
Right. Well, upbringing, but also the opportunity. So when you think about professional athletes, right, they're starting at maybe 6 or 7 years old, they're playing Pop Warner. And then once they're identified as a standout, their entire trajectory is all based on athletics, right? You guys see this.
Right.
And so even in your scouting, you're looking at kids who have that something special. When they do, you make sure that they're getting all the agility training, that they're, involved in these different sports. Maybe it's a club sport as well as their school sports. So they're getting all this exposure to athletics. Then they get to high school, they're still a standout. And then guess what? There's a mic in their face. And so, while other kids maybe are exposed to a career day with their parents or, internships when you get into college, a lot of student athletes are just all about having to stay on that single course. So they don't get the training that comes naturally when you're not an athlete. They don't get the opportunity to be in front of an audience and talk about something that they're passionate about because they either have a helmet on or they're dribbling or they're a volleyball in their hand or something like that. They're always laser focused on sports. So I think it's a combination, right? I think it's access to opportunity, but I also think it's just not having the platform to practice what you guys are doing every day. You're practicing speaking publicly, so whether you're coaching your team or on a podcast or on TV.
Yeah. So when you first were in television, obviously social media was not what it is today. And then, so you were in television for what, about 5 years before you started Mediaverse, your own company?
No, I went a whole 15 years.
15 years in television first, before you started your own company. So now, why did it take you 15 years to do something that you noticed so early on that you were so passionate about? Did you have to get your feet wet first? Did you have to have credibility? And then what's changed from then to now in terms of, how they may see how they're supposed to handle themselves and how it's layered now because of the impact of social media?
I think that is a great question. I think what quote unquote took me so long is that I was having great success on the news track. And even though I was very interested in sports and would spend most of my spare time in the sports department of our newsrooms and had people say, well, why don't you do sports? that wasn't it for me. You know, I was loving the success I was having. And I thought, well, maybe this is really my calling. I know I'm really pulled in that direction, but I'm loving this. Like, I love live TV. Like, I just absolutely love it. And so I stayed on that track for a while. And then it was when the first time that a station ever did not renew my contract, which is, you know, code for I got fired from my TV job.
Mm-hmm.
When they don't renew your contract, that's the equivalent. And it wasn't anything aggressive, like, you know, they bring a box to your desk and you pack up and leave. It was just, okay, your contract's coming up. We're going to go in another direction. And so that kind of really shook me. I thought, wait a minute, I thought I had it down. I thought I was like, you know, I thought I was going to be doing this for a while, and I could have gone to another station, another city. But, you know, when we are so caught up in what we do for a living that it becomes our identity, and then it's taken away in some shape or fashion, it like rocks us to the core. Right? Would you agree? It's like,
I would say all three of us can agree with that and understand it completely as coaches or administrators in higher education, which John is. Yeah.
yeah.
Not just that. I think you make an investment, and then, you know, one day you realize that the yield of the investment has stopped paying a dividend. And so, you know, like for me, it was the amount of time I spent as a yoga teacher. And then I stopped, and I was like, oh, I have to redefine myself and who I am, because it had become such a large part of what my identity was like.
But in Barbara, I have a question for you, talking about that. It's probably harder for you because you were so well known. Mm-hmm. And so people around town would know you not as Barbara, the neighbor or down the street, but they would know you as the person on TV that they don't see on TV anymore. Are you coming back? What's the situation? And so you had to go out every day, probably whether to go to grocery store or to anywhere, you had to readdress what's going on. Whereas those of us that aren't as well known, we have to keep that to our families. No one's pointing us out at the grocery store. And talk about what that was like going through that transition.
Well, first of all, I would love to see Gordon do a yoga pose. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I'm just saying that would be pretty awesome.
Wait, what about my yoga poses? We both teach yoga. Who would you take, Gordon or me, if you were taking
one of us? One of us keeps our shirt on when we teach. The other one of us. The other one of us is Bikram.
Right.
I think I'm going to pass on answering that question and
That's
go to John's question.
Very smart. Smart.
You know, John, that's a really awesome question as well, because I can remember after my time at one of the stations ended, we were out at brunch after church, my now husband and I, and we walked by a table and this lady said, hey, you're the lady from such and such station, right? Barbara, right? And I said, yeah. And she said, she made a comment that was like, almost as if to say, yeah, I'm kind of glad they brought the other girl in. And I was like, what? And she was just so bold. It threw me off. And I'm like, wow. But the reason she said it, I'm a very fair-skinned African-American. So really I'm Black, Chinese, and Latina, right? But most of the world sees me as African-American woman, and that's what I identify with, as well as being Latina. But I'm a Black and brown woman. But I'm very fair-skinned. And she made a comment to say, it's not that she didn't like the work I did. She just preferred that there was a darker skinned woman, Black woman on air. And I mean,
where were you? Was this in Charlotte?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. And back then, Charlotte was not what it is now.
Dude, so on top of everything else, that shook me. But and social media was kind of slowly picking up at that point. Wow. So you're able to see the comments. And thankfully, most of the comments were like, where did she go? Why did they let her? I'm tired of seeing this revolving door. She was great. You should have kept her. They had great rapport. She was warm and whatever. But yeah, that made it a lot harder. Not her comment necessarily, but going out and people saying, I miss seeing you on air. You know, and it took me to the point where I just basically had a breakdown one day. I was just like, what in the world? And so after I went through all of that, it was like, okay, wait a minute. Like, you feel so lost and drained and just furious. And then finally, I remember I just went and I basically went in to take a nap. And I remember praying before I did and said, look, Lord, I don't like what I'm seeing. I don't like what I've turned into. My time is up. It's time for somebody else. I want to get to a point where that doesn't bother me anymore. And so when I woke up from that nap, I really felt honestly like this weight was lifted off of me. And I had this clear vision of, okay, Barbara, you can't get stuck there. What else is in your tool bag? And so I started to go back and remember, like, oh, I really love how athletes, you know, have the platform, and they actually impact more people than I ever could. Even if I went to the pinnacle of my career, CNN, and a CNN anchor, the youth would be the ones or the athletes would be the ones to impact the youth the most, because that's the demographic I care about the most. And so I just kind
One
of
door closed and one door opened.
well, I had to open it though. As you mentioned at the very beginning, I'm this little 5'4", little black chick, didn't play any sports. I tried volleyball, but I was too short to spike. I ran track, and I thought, why do people run unless you're being chased by someone with a machete? So that was just not my thing. So I cheered. I was a cheerleader. But in my heart, I just kept thinking, like, I've amassed 15 years at that point of understanding what happens between me having a face-to-face conversation with someone and sticking a camera and mic in their face. There's a huge disconnect. So that in and of itself was like an opportunity to say, okay, I can do something with that. And then just really seeing more and more stories of athletes going broke 3 to 5 to 7 years after they've left their respective leagues. It's like, what's happening? You can build a parallel career, or at least, get some traction in that area just by using your platform, just giving it a little bit of attention. So I ended up writing a book called Athletes and the Media Bridging the Gap that really helps, just what it says, bridge the gap between athletes who think the media is out to get them and between the journalists who think the athletes just don't want to be bothered with them. And I used that to make some connections and inroads and started doing the media coaching.
That's amazing. So you've stated that Cliff Averill from the Legion of Boom and London Fletcher, who played D3 football, if my memory serves me correctly.
John Carroll. I believe he went to John Carroll, right?
John Carroll.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Where did Cliff Averill play? Where did he play his professional ball?
Cliff Averill, he played with the Lions, and they're losing.
No, the other team he played for.
The Seahawks. Yeah, he wouldn't want me, starting with the Lions, even though that's where he played. He played with the Seahawks, Seattle Seahawks, and then
he got drafted in 2008 with the Lions.
Yeah, that was a horrible season, man.
Oh,
now they went to the Super Bowl recently and didn't win. But when was the Lions in the Super Bowl last? Mike, I know you know this.
So, anyways,
that was so not cool, but okay. I see how we're working here.
So you started working with professional athletes, primarily down in the South, and that's where you made some inroads. And so, talk a little bit about. Do you have a financial planner that's also a part of your company that helps them with the financial aspect of it, or is it just you and the aspect of you're trying to help them be a better commentator or go into television and that type of thing?
Yeah, I have my lane. So my husband actually is a corporate guy, so we have talked a lot about merging kind of what we do with him offering the leadership training, but primarily to date it has been all about communication. So if they are transitioning out of the sport to go into commentating or public speaking, I've helped them, athletes, in that way. And then still the active players. So I have worked several years now with the Panthers and the Jacksonville Jaguars, and when the Bobcats were the Bobcats here in Charlotte, now they're the Hornets. So I'm slowly kind of branching out to the team level as well, but it's a different type of coaching because it's group coaching, it's a one and done, but it is impactful, I think.
Barbara, what do you think? Obviously, you deal with a lot of athletes who, if they didn't graduate from college, they went to big time schools or even middle of the road schools. What could athletic departments and then in essence the universities be doing better? Not on the field, but outside of it with these to prepare them, even the ones that aren't going to go, maybe, NFL average playing is 3.5 years, so, and none of them very few of them are going to make enough money for that money to last them through that. So they're going to have skill sets in some manner. and you talked about it, how they should use the platform of being a professional athlete for other things later on. But what do you think is missing? Because I remember one of the things Rick Pitino did at Kentucky is he made all his freshmen take an entry to communications class before they could speak to the media.
Mm-hmm.
And they had to get a B plus, or I think a B or B plus or higher, before he would let them in front of any cameras. Even Jamal Mashburn back in the day had to do that class first term freshman year, and then he put them in front because he was concerned about their long-term image from that standpoint.
I think they should be doing exactly what I think the professional team should be doing, and actually ramp up how much they really care about the athlete. And I'm not trying to indict all the college programs, but I am saying that, that's their training ground. And to your point, John, a lot of them will not go on necessarily to play at the professional level. When you think of the 1.6, it's over 1 million kids who play high school football.
Right.
You start to break down the numbers, you're dealing with a few hundred who are going to be drafted.
Right.
So it's kind of like, I know that there is a care there, and I'm all for profit sharing. I don't want to take this conversation. I know we're going to talk about Black Lives Matter, but I'm all for it. If you're going to use my likeness to build a winning program, or a program where people show up to watch, then hey, maybe you don't give that to me right away. Maybe you put that in a trust, like the NBA has that bridge program.
Right.
Maybe you put a certain percentage of the earnings from that year that I played into a bridge program that I can access when I'm 25. You know what I mean? Like maybe something like that, so that there's a financial security, at least at some level. And then I totally love that Pitino did that. All right, put them in a communication class, but you know what else? Teach them finances.
Right.
Make them take an entrepreneurial course. Because for the guys who don't go on, the standouts who don't go on to play at the professional level, they still have had the same amount of time tied up in athletics throughout their college career. They've missed out on the internships. They haven't traveled abroad. The NCAA had some pretty interesting studies come out a couple of years ago about how much time the athletes are really spending, which is far more than anyone. They're spending more time on that than they're doing anything else. So do some profit sharing, do it in a way that, is going to be a little less controversial, maybe. I don't know. The NCC has their own stipulations. I get that. But provide some type of avenue for them to have access to resources, but then teach them what to do with their resources.
So how has your advice changed now versus 15 years ago, in particular the last few months? What are the conversations like with some of your clients? Because now if they have a knee-jerk reaction, or they have a Steven Jackson reaction, to dial that back is going to take a lot, because first impressions impact people tremendously. And as we talked about off air a little bit about how Don Lemon, for example, tried to give, Steven Jackson an opportunity to reel back his comments. He had a hard time not doubling down. And so if to that point, if I'm the next King James, and I come to you and say, I want you to guide me in the areas that you're an expert in, what's that conversation like when I sit down with you for the first time?
The conversation for me would be start a journal. Like, what comes out of everything that we're experiencing now between COVID-19, the Black Lives Matter movement, how the narratives are being disrupted when people who are not coming from a place of education make statements that aren't factual, or when they stir up the pot, it's impacting everyone differently. And I think a lot of athletes are sharing their personal experiences with police brutality, for example, which I think is needed. But I also think that now is a good time to really trace kind of where you are as a college or professional athlete, what this is doing to you, how it's impacting you, so that you have a story that has more substance to it on the back end, right? So I'm all about trying to develop parallel opportunities. You're a professional basketball player to the level of LeBron James, but maybe you're not as active as him, and maybe you don't use your voice the way that he does, which is incredible, by the way. maybe you're someone who's more quiet, like I was in high school. Silence doesn't mean that you don't care, by the way. So, maybe you're being quiet and you're taking it all in. Start a journal. Oh my gosh, the stories that can come out of this, where maybe 2 years from now, you are the go-to retired athlete who has not just a personal story of encounters with police, but now you have traced this whole journey, and you can help companies now navigate this whole idea of diversity, equity, and inclusion and cultural competency at a completely different level. Like, you don't have to have a signature speech right now, but just start to journal how this is impacting you and your family, the sport, how it's different from when you were in college. I mean, I think it's an opportunity to trace this, to document this history, so that you have a unique perspective that can actually move the needle when we're kind of a year or two out. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So, we're just at the crumb stage, right? As they have said
Which we
numerous
hope will
times.
continue to accumulate, because we've been at
Yes.
the crumb stage before, and the crumbs have been dusted away with a big breeze. And then we're like back to square one.
Exactly.
Barbara?
So, yeah, go ahead.
Barbara, you've mentioned speaking out here, and the crux of that is your work with athletes, and you've mentioned Charlotte. Do you think that Michael Jordan has been unfairly criticized for the lack of his voice in the public forum?
Now, that is a interesting question, and I would say yes and no. He's not been very vocal. Hoot and I were talking about that earlier, and but I think we have to kind of give people grace and space. I don't think silence means that he's complicit with everything. He has had an amazing platform, but I think we also have to kind of put ourselves in the mindset of someone like we talked about. Our bread and butter, what we've known all these years as a career, is now gone. It's over. Those years of being the GOAT, I mean, it's kind of like, so you still have to do something with your life. And there has been, up until this particular movement, there has been a penalty for speaking out. Mm-hmm. And if you're not speaking with the masses behind you, if you haven't had the support of numbers that we're seeing now, there have been huge penalties, and we don't always see them, but they exist. And at the level where he was trying to become an owner, gain more of an ownership in a team, look, I mean, I don't know what was at play behind the scenes, but you have to consider, you have to know, if you're Black and brown in this country, there is a penalty that will be paid one way or another. And so I understand why people say, well, he should have used his platform, but alone, a single foot soldier is not going to move the needle enough. The fact that if he had not come out right now, then yeah, I could totally get it. Like, dude, come on,
Well, Mark Cuban has opened the door a little bit wider, hasn't he?
You know what? A lot of people are really jumping into this at a pivotal time. And you think about it, like if COVID-19 weren't happening, we wouldn't be here.
Right, we'd all be at work.
We'd be at work, practicing self-preservation, some of us, yep. Right? And so I think it's just I think we're supposed to be here. I believe everything happens for a reason. And I think we're supposed to be here. You think about, it is like the perfect storm. I can't remember what that movie was. Maybe it was called The Perfect Storm, where everything aligns for this huge tragedy. But on the back end, there's so much change and really just change. Opportunity. We're hoping for change, though. We don't want opportunity anymore. We want actual change.
Yes.
But I love that it's happening at so many different levels. There's, when you think about racism in this country, it is probably the most complex issue that one can tackle. So it has to be attacked from every possible angle. We need the people who are protesting. We need it to go into day 80, 90, 100, right? We need the people who are pushing back. We need the athletes who are going to make ill-advised statements on social media so that we can raise the level of education and really dig in and say, okay, it's not just about, I'm going to speak out because I'm a Black professional athlete and I have a platform. It comes with the responsibility of educating yourself too, right? We need education. But if you have a Black athlete who is coming from a place of education and can share information in a way that promotes inclusion, oh my gosh. And then you've got that replicated over and over and over again. Look at what it does. You have a Roger Goodell coming out the next day saying, talking about we got it wrong with the kneeling.
Definitely.
All those athletes come together to say, I'm George Floyd. I'm George Floyd. I mean, that was amazing. I don't know if you guys have seen the video recently with, you saw it?
Yeah.
Victor Cruz, Cam Newton, Odell Beckham, and
Since we spoke earlier, I watched
Mahomes.
Yeah.
No. I mean, the one that just came out a couple days ago on YouTube. It just had Victor Cruz, Cam Newton, Todd Gurley, and Odell Beckham Jr., who was the one who actually brought them together. Have you guys seen that one?
I watched it since we spoke earlier. Yeah.
No, I didn't. I didn't see that one.
Oh, John and Gordon, you've got to check that out. It is so deep. And it talks about how they are asking them if they are going or what they're going to do to put pressure on the NFL to keep this topic at center stage.
I want to go back to, sorry to interrupt, but I want to go back to your point earlier, because this is where listening and learning is so important. Because I know for myself, I was so irritated for the longest time that Jordan and Tiger Woods never spoke out. Mm-hmm. And you gave me a different perspective to say, well, now that Michael Jordan's an owner, now he has a platform even bigger than his brand, that he might be able to put pressure on other owners, or globally, or in a different way that might have more of an impact than if he had spoken out right away about some of the social injustices that he had been witnessing, whether it's Rodney King or anything between now and Breonna Taylor or anything else. So I'm not necessarily saying that I'm changing my opinion. I still think him and Tiger Woods could have done a lot more, but I never thought about it in that way, where the economic disparities between whites and African Americans obviously is a huge component to all of this perception of African Americans changing. I think in our society is that we have to change the economics of this country.
You're implying it was strategic, Mike?
I don't know if it was strategic, but people get credit for things whether they intended for them to be or not. And I think that whether or not he did it for that reason, or he finally had the courage to get past his brand to speak out,
or maybe it's just a matter of I mean, look, we can't all sit around and meditate because nobody would take out the trash. I mean, everybody's got it. There are different roles that have to be fulfilled, and maybe it wasn't something that was a conscious plan, or something that he strategized, or he was waiting for his opportunity. Maybe that's just not where he's comfortable, and that's not his role in the larger picture of the movement, if you will. I mean, he can play a role. Maybe his role isn't with his mouth.
Well, I think as he's gotten older, sorry, Barbara, just one thing I thought about was between what Gordon said and what you mentioned, I think it struck a chord with him, these things that are going on, and Kobe Bryant dying. I think all of those things sort of pushed him to a head, and he just felt like he had to, come out and speak on this, because it was just overwhelming for him, not to mention The Last Dance. And there's just been a lot of things that have sort of forced his hand, so to speak, from my perspective.
Barbara, I'm curious, you talk about the athletes, and we have a number of NFL owners right now. Woody Johnson's story coming out, Daniel Snyder, we know the history with Jerry Jones. And at some point, when do you think the NFL will start taking a stance? Either who the new owners be, or it's hard to force someone out. I mean, you were there in Charlotte with Jerry Richards.
Yeah.
And that was very sad, because I have friends who work at, he did a lot for Wofford College and other places in that area. And it just turned tragic at the end. And, and it ended up having to sell the team, and he kind of did that on his own. What happens when an owner doesn't do that on their own? And you have the wealth of a Woody Johnson and others, and these players don't want to play. You're dealing with a majority African American players on the teams who are in an environment that in any other walk of life would be a hostile environment. And if it was a company, the CEO would have to step down.
And the pandemic.
So, just so I'm clear, are you asking what the NFL should do if the owners who have extreme privilege are not willing to kind of admit to?
I think what I'm asking is with the players speaking out more, and they're obviously strategic, and that's what they're using. And that's the other thing I think people are doing now with the pandemic is they're able to strategically communicate in one message, and whether it's their agents getting together, or maybe they all have the same agent. I haven't done that much homework on who these guys' agents are, but at what point does the NFL and other leagues have to realize if they don't address this head on early on, like this Snyder thing should have been addressed 5-7 years ago. I mean, they're literally at a point where they can't name the football team because one fan bought the rights to 56 names.
That's incredible.
And they would have to pay him millions of dollars for every option of a name they want. And they're still in negotiations with him. But my point is, but they put themselves in this situation because they didn't get in front of it 5, 7, 10 years ago. I mean, the Redskin name goes on, but really with Daniel Snyder, it's more like 10 years ago where it was first addressed and he was so belligerent of not wanting to do anything about it. Where does a league come in with all the facets that come around the league with the players, the fans, and everything in the image?
So the image is very vulnerable at this point, right? And that's pretty much for every league for different reasons, how they're handling the pandemic, the safety of the players. I think the latest study said 58 or 59% of the NFL is made up of athletes of color. So, and that's dropped. It used to be a little bit more than that. It was closer to 70%. But either way you look at it, everything it's like an eggshell situation, right? And I don't think any one league is going to get it right necessarily because it's such a complex thing. But what I do think is that the owners, as they come together or they meet virtually and they have their conversations, whatever those conversations are behind the scenes, I would hope that they would start to put pressure on one another, right? Because if you have one or two teams whose players are now saying, yeah, I'm not really feeling that GM or that owner, I don't know. Okay, so now that threatens the success for all of the teams. And I think this is, like, when you think about privilege in this country, this is where it really comes into play. The players, even as a united front, unless everyone from every team said, I'm not going to play, I don't know that would move the needle in the right direction. I think the owners, the other people with privilege have to come together and say, hey, you 2 or 3 who also have privilege, now you're messing it up for everyone. I think that's one way that it has to be approached. But the voice of the athletes and how united it is now, they are demanding change. And I think that's beautiful. The disconnect, I think, is that we have a league that's saying, we are committed to this. We're going to sing the Black national anthem. We're going to do these. They're doing things versus actually, and I don't know if they're not doing this, but what we see is that they're doing things to bring the focus on Black lives, saying that they matter. But I wonder if the hiring of Black coaches, you could hire 15 Black coaches, but are they still subject to the microaggression that happens behind the scenes, right? So until we get in there and we actually start to pick apart some of these ideologies, then I think we're still going to be in a really tight position.
I have a friend who says, don't mistake activity for accomplishment.
Exactly.
And I think there's a lot of activity. I don't see a lot of accomplishment on the leagues, on these to date with these leagues. I think the NFL, with the Rooney Rule has tried, but it
failed.
Yeah, I mean, it got a few early on. It worked, I think, and then, like anything, it started getting, people didn't follow through with it.
Yeah.
Because a few, like the Tomlins and a few, get in, and then from that standpoint, people are like, "Oh, it's working. We can just leave it alone."
But think about that. Like, why did it not work? Why did it fall through? unless everyone is on the same page, you know, if you have privilege, you have to now negotiate giving up some of that privilege to make room for other people. That's a hard decision to make.
Right.
You know what I mean? You think about even athletes who are competing for a starting position, like you're going to go out there and give it your all because you don't want to give up the privilege, the power, the finances that come with it, just the joy. If you love the game that much, you want to be the starter. You want to be that guy.
Right.
Well, it's no different no matter what industry you're in and no matter where you're at. When you are at a place of privilege, you don't want to give it up. Who wants to give it up? Right? So that's one of the problems. But the other problem is if we don't get in and we don't have dialogue, like, you know, I know the NFL did a series of town halls. Those are discussions. Like I've talked to some of the guys who are part of those, and it's like, yeah, but you know, we didn't really like get into it. Or, you know, you cannot deal with this by just talking about it. It needs to be a structure. It needs to be dialogue. You need to probe. What is the stereotype? Why does it exist? Let's break down what's true about it and what isn't true about it. And so I was talking to Hoot earlier. That's basically where I'm pivoting my company. I'm getting my PhD in urban geography, and so I've been in the thick of this whole idea of unconscious bias and white privilege and Black geographies and the mediation of sports and the commodification of Black bodies for media framing of Black athletes. Like this is my zone right now. And I'm getting a certification to be a dialogue facilitator in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I want to bring it all together to say, hey, look, if you're telling the public as a team that you are totally in favor of Black Lives Matter, that you want to be a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive type of team and company and organization, then let's actually get to the heart of it. Why don't you bring someone in to have those real heartfelt dialogues with not just the players, but the coaches, the front office. Everybody needs to be exposed to handling how we view difference and how we process difference. Like we all need a tutorial and a self-reflection to say, okay, maybe I've been getting it wrong. Maybe if I just do one or two things a little bit differently, I'll start to have different outcomes. And guess what? You know, when Drew Brees first made that statement about the kneeling, there was one athlete, and I tried to go back and I couldn't find it, but he said I think it was Instagram. He said, "I hear your apology, but I will never forget this." Right? This stuff is going to spill onto the field. Mm-hmm. It's inevitable. If I know that I'm going to battle with the three of you, but maybe one of you has said something that lets me know that you're not, if rubber hits the road, I might be expendable, then guess what? That changes how I show up. Mm-hmm. And Definitely. So if you don't have that cohesiveness, if you're just talking about the almighty dollar, they want to win those games and bring that fan base in, guess what? The NFL owners who are accused of these indiscretions or whatever you want to call them for being with the sexual harassment charges or being racially insensitive, like I said, the other owners, I think, are going to call them on the carpet. But at the same time, there has to be something structured that comes into those organizations and is a safe space for, if it's a white assistant coach or I don't know, who comes in and they just heard something and they don't know what to do with it. They need to have a place to go to say, okay, I heard this and this. What is true? What isn't? How should I be processing this? Because the athletes are going to hold them accountable if they don't speak up. Silence is being penalized now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely shifted. So what else do you want to share with everyone before we get into the this or that portion of the podcast? With everyone that we haven't talked about.
Just for the record, that this or that is where the ratings go way down.
Oh, no, I would hope not. I hope you've got some good stuff for me. I just want to share two things. I've heard some of your other podcasts, and I've heard a couple books mentioned. I would like to recommend a paper called White Privilege, Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack by Peggy McIntosh. And she's a white professor who kind of was upset about being excluded as a woman in certain spaces. And then she realized that even with those disparities, she still had a certain amount of privilege that she could exercise at any given time. And I think that's important to realize. I think we all need to kind of look at ourselves and say, what is that privilege that I can exercise at any given time? A quote is, I've come to see white privilege as an invisible package of unearned assets, which I can count on cashing in each day, but about which I was meant to remain oblivious. So that's one of the people. And then another one is a woman by the name of Catherine McKittrick, who has done a lot. She's a PhD as well, and she's done a lot of work in the prison system. And so one of her quotes is, Black lives are necessarily geographic. So even though, like, I'm studying the humble beginnings narrative of athletes and what that shows about what's needed in stigmatized communities, right? We hear LeBron James in the Nike commercial is a prime example. We hear that athletes beat the odds to escape poverty and lack. Well, when you break that down, that's there to show us that there are needs in these communities that need to be fulfilled. You know, we're sending money to gentrify this neighborhood. Well, why don't we shift some of it back so this high school has a level football field so that their athletes don't have to worry about spraining an ankle when they go out to practice, right? So I really believe that there are, when we think about Black Lives Matter, the movement, my lane for this is bringing awareness to the invisible pieces that aren't talked about as much. Having a real a dialogue, not a conversation, a dialogue about how you feel about how different I am. I think that's important. And then shedding light on the resources, access to resources. So those are my two readings for you guys. Other than that, I'm good. I believe I'm where I'm supposed to be. I can't wait to start working with teams on that level. And I'm just excited about it.
So has anything changed as far as what advice you give young athletes or your clients now in the last 3 months versus pre-March?
Yeah, I would say that it's really, I think it's a cool time for young athletes in particular to understand where they stand on issues, you know, to understand and learn how to articulate their passion for whatever it is they're passionate about. So if you're passionate about Black lives, let's kind of step back and say, okay, how can I articulate this in a way that is true to me, but that also brings about a level of change or perspective that's going to unify as opposed to divide. So I would definitely say, like, dig in and let's get educated on things that maybe to date we haven't looked into as deeply. And if you have, great, learn more. Just be an open book and learn as much as you can, because this is like, we're making history right now. And so I would tell them to really kind of, instead of posting right away out of emotion, kind of take yourself through a filtering process to say, what do I really know? What else could I know? And then post.
Is there time for that? I mean, there's sort of a rhythm to social media that is brief.
That's why I think it's totally a time for that.
Yeah.
I mean, if you do what everybody else is doing, your messages get lost anyway, unless one of the sports networks picks it up and then it's all over. But I mean, think of how much value they would give themselves, their communities, the kids who look up to them, if they just paused for a minute and figured out what's really going on, learned a little bit more about it, and then expressed themselves. Oh my gosh, that's golden.
That might be a good rule for everybody.
Right?
Yeah.
Totally.
And that's exactly what I want to do with my, so it's always the back end. This is the media coaching piece. You know, how are we showing up in the media? But it has to be addressed from what leads you to post, that emotional stuff. Let's deal with it in a way. Let's teach you some filters that you can take yourself through as a coach, as a player, as a front office personnel. Let's take yourself through these filters so that when you're posting, it's true to you, you've actually learned something new, and you're not causing so much controversy, so that when it's time to go play, we're actually more of a united front, because I just learned something from your post versus, wow, you know, you really shouldn't have said that. That was offensive. And I'm not saying now, I mean, we're going to offend people. right? You offend someone, that's them blaming you for something they don't understand. I mean, you can interpret that so many different ways, but at the end of the day, that's what I would tell the young athletes. Let's come up with a filter that you take yourself through so that you can post responsibly and in a way that's true to you.
So you talk about staying in your lane before I get to these very important questions here coming up, but is going to you enough, and do you ask them other questions about who else they're involved with to make sure that they're balanced? Because if they're not going to a financial planner, if they're not going to do some things to help with stress management, if they're, don't they have to have some other things in place? Otherwise, what you're talking about is you're doing them a disservice.
As far as the media coaching, or you mean just being?
Yeah, the media coaching, because you're more than a media coach, right? You're a life coach. You have other areas that you're sort of going to dabble into in terms of 6 degrees of separation. When you're having these conversations with them, it's not just simply going to be, make sure that you look a certain way and don't, slouch your shoulders when you're talking to the.
Oh, well, that's not my coaching anyway. All that stuff you just said, I would never say that. And I would never say that I'm doing any of my clients a disservice, because anytime you teach someone a skill and how to express themselves and own their voice, that's nothing but golden, right? So no, all the way across, no, I'm not doing anyone a disservice. If anything, it allows them. And the way that I coach is out of the box thinking. The way that I coach is pulling back the layers so they realize exactly what it is they're passionate about, how to share their stories. And then there is like a network of people who are not in the organizations. Like if there's a financial issue that comes up and we've built that trust and camaraderie, and they ask me, guess what? I've got a Black-owned accounting firm. If that's what you're interested in, here's their information. So I will not jump out of my lane, because if I try to advise them in anything other than what I know, then I'm doing a disservice. But as we build the trust and camaraderie, and they have questions or they mention something, I am more than happy to share resources. That's kind of what we do for the people who are not didn't grow up in athletics or aren't totally tied to a team. That's kind of how we function in this space.
Well, and you talked about earlier when we were talking off the podcast a little bit about the different kinds of African-American athletes economically, and that impacts sometimes how you approach what you do.
So, when I'm doing this idea of the humble's beginning narrative, I mean, it's a reality for a lot of Black athletes. And so with my research, I'm trying to unpack exactly what it now exposes about different communities. And honestly, I feel like, you have LeBron James, who started the I Promise Academy, which is amazing, but the onus should not just be on the athletes who, quote unquote, are able to leave these humble beginnings and make a lot of money. It shouldn't just be on them to go back to their communities and give back, right? Like, what is that saying about our society? So unless someone from a certain part of East Charlotte makes it big, you're not going to go and expand the gymnasium so that or West Charlotte, so that the team who won the rights to a championship game can actually host the game in their gymnasium. You're not going to do that because someone from the NBA is not a part or comes from this community. So it's like, there are so many different, being Black in America is so complex. Being a Black athlete, there's a dominant narrative. There are other narratives too. But my research really just focuses on, what are we saying when we say okay, yeah, you made it, so come build this community center. Otherwise, we won't have one. How ridiculous is that?
I never thought of it that way. Yeah.
That's the systemic piece of what we talk about. Those systems in place are just awful.
Yeah, very interesting. All right, here we go. Time to rock and roll. Mario Brothers or Tetris?
Mario Brothers.
All righty, very confident in that response. Victorian, modern, or shabby chic?
Shabby chic.
Wow, really? With that painting in the background?
That's just one little piece of our house.
Oh, there we go. I want to see something shabby chic in your office right now. Is that possible?
No, because we're in
No.
transition.
We're
We've
in
got
transition.
a little
That,
sound
I
booth
think
over here.
I think the microphone was shabby chic.
You think?
That was modern.
Yeah.
That
Okay.
was modern.
I thought it was more shabby. Okay.
Chinese or
We
Japanese
could
food?
talk about my hair being shabby.
Oh, hey. No, your hair looks great. You look amazing.
You are very kind. Very kind.
Chinese or Japanese?
Chinese. I'm part
Vacuuming or dishes?
What's that?
Vacuuming or dishes?
Vacuuming.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Doing the dishes or drying the dishes?
I'd rather do the dishes than dry them.
I did not expect that answer. After the previous question.
Yeah.
Family Feud or Price is Right?
Ooh, Family Feud.
Liquid or foam hand soap?
Foam.
Okay. Emoji with face with rolling eyes or tears of joy cracking up?
Cracking up.
If you had to eat one meal for the rest of your life every day, what would it be?
Sushi.
Wow. Land on Mars or the moon?
The moon.
Monopoly or Scrabble?
Monopoly.
Netflix, Hulu, or YouTube?
Netflix.
Reading a book or audiobook?
Reading.
Paper or plastic?
Paper.
Wow. Very recycling and green of you. Monster trucks or dog show?
How about muscle cars?
Muscle cars. There we go. Scooby-Doo or Tom and Jerry?
Oh my gosh. Now that's a tough one. Tom and Jerry.
Wow. Hangman or tic-tac-toe?
Tic-tac-toe.
First thing that comes to mind when I say Spike Lee.
Oh, the big radio. Radio Raheem.
Oh my God. Wow. Vacation.
Curacao.
Birthday.
My daughter just had her 8th.
Nice. If you were playing a song in the background right now, what would it be?
This is why I'm hot.
Oh, Lord. Which of the following is not true about me? I cut my own hair. I played against NBA players. I'm an Uber driver.
I'm an Uber driver.
That is correct. Oh, man, that was great.
How about a story about Mike from back in the day?
Oh, God, here we go.
Yep.
You know what? Mike, it was Mike, Ricky Resnick, Mike Hootner, Jared Eisenstadt,
Go Red.
Jared Eisenstadt, and me.
Yes.
Right? So you had like these 3 white guys and me. And I was such a book girl and a nerd. Like I remember, it's not so much about Mike, but we shared a teacher, Mr. Waldman.
Oh.
And to this day, he was our geometry teacher. To this day, I remember him. He used to take a ruler and he used to go around the classroom and he would slam the ruler on the desk saying stuff like, Sokatoa, sign is opposite over hypotenuse and all that. So he had like this.
Dancing on the desks.
Oh my gosh.
Singing songs. And
was
well,
out
that's
there.
not the best part though. He's an Orthodox Jewish
Yes.
teacher with a long beard and a kippah on his head and making faces while we were reading, our problems in the middle of class. He was just, you cannot even describe him.
So
Yeah.
that was my memory of Oak Park High School with me, Ricky, Hoot, and Jared in Mr. Waldman's class. And so, you talk about a multicultural experience. There you have it.
Thank you. It's perfect.
Well, sorry to take you away from the kiddo. We appreciate your amazing insight and the work that you're doing in the community. And I applaud you for going back to school and wanting to continue to be a lifelong learner and set such an amazing example, not just at home, but to everyone that you cross paths with along the way. And I think, we haven't talked in a while, but I'm glad we reconnected. I'm proud of you and I love you, and I'm glad you're doing what you're doing. And you let that door close and found another door. You created that opportunity for yourself, and I applaud you for all of that.
You skillfully reinvented.
You
No,
pivoted.
it's yeah.
Very true.
Thank you. Thank you. I think
Well,
we
enjoy
all,
the movie. And any parting words before we say goodnight?
no, just appreciate you guys. It's a really unique opportunity to be so um, to be so brutally honest about where we are. I think it's just really important to just say, you know, this is where we are as a nation, and I love that people are protesting, and I think we should still do that. I love that guys will, like you, will use your privilege to stand up for something, but my lane is my lane, and I'm really excited to be at a point where I can practice, stay in my lane, and focus. Because I think if we all just do that, I just think it's amazing the change that we'll see. I think it's going to be painful, but I think it's necessary. And so I applaud everyone who, even if they're not there yet, they're striving to get there, because that's big in and of itself. So thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for the opportunity. And I look forward to staying in touch.
Yes, definitely. All right. We love and appreciate you.
Great
Thank
to have
you,
you on, Barbara.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you. Nice meeting you.
That's meeting you.
Our
Take care.
pleasure.
Bye.
Bye. Well, she had some interesting perspectives.
I was actually quite fascinated with what she was saying and didn't really want to interrupt her.
Body
Exactly.
language.
Body language, I'm lucky I can keep my eyes open body language wise.
You're telling me after being on the phone until 3 a.m.
Oh, boy. Oh, you said it was 1. Now it's 3?
Well, 1:33. It's the same thing. It might as well be 3.
Did you leave him at a Wawa store somewhere?
Him and Wax. Oh man. So what'd you guys think?
Very interesting. I think you're going to see more of this. I think you're going to, the one thing I was going to ask her that is I think you're going to see a different trajectory for people going into the media, that you're not going to see them start at these small TV stations. They're going to start on things like this. It'll be interesting.
Advising?
No. I'm talking about getting, but they're going to get to they're going to get into that.
I'm about podcasting.
Right. They may not need to work at a TV station, is my point.
Some place where the barriers to entry are very low.
Exactly. They get there quicker. They make an impact, and then they can either transition or quite frankly do both.
Well, if you have an audience, you can redirect it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. By the way, will you be landing any planes at LaGuardia later with that headset?
We got trouble on runway 4.
Runway number 3. We're gonna have to ask you to hold on.
I mean, what about Hooter? He looks like the offensive coordinator for John Carroll.
I don't know what he looks like, but we're doing a podcast. It's audio, and I know people are going to be able to tell the difference between the microphones. I don't know what mine sounds like. Mike sounds great. Mike has a mic, and then you and we probably need some help.
Well, I have a backup set. I have this set too.
Okay, maybe use that.
You don't like this? Not sounding good?
Well, you
sound
okay.
I'd say you're about
little tinny.
About a 6 or 7 out of
6.
Hold on.
Oh, here we go.
Okay, some technical, hang on, we need some
10,
background music,
9,
some elevator
8,
music.
7. He's gonna have to.
We need a little, exactly, a little jingle. Okay, these aren't working.
How's this?
Better.
Worse.
No. Put him. He doesn't know which way to put him on.
Where's the microphone?
Right here.
Oh, there we go. Wait, start talking. Here we go.
Testing. 1, 2, 3.
Oh, much better. I agree.
Okay.
Yeah, let's get a hold of Wendell. We can get a technology consultation during this podcast.
Oh, we'd have to call him on his home phone.
He's got AOL old school internet service.
Wendell's show sponsored by Cricket.
Windows show is sponsored by Cricket.
Does Wex know we're calling him? Does Wex know we're calling him Windows?
Windows. Autocorrect Windows. Windows Wallace. John has left the building.
I'm leaving now. I will return shortly.
You will?
20 minutes.
No, we're going to be gone in 20 minutes, Mr.
Okay.
Wexler.
I don't get to tell him my
Any
story.
final thoughts, John, on anything else?
I want a new background from Gordon, and I want.
This is a guy sitting,
and I'll give you
this is a guy
120
sitting
for
in
the
front-
Toro Mower. And I want to know.
Guy-
I want to know about the American Eagle.
Wait.
I want to know about the
Wait,
American Eagle and what is that crap to the
people
right,
need to know,
to the left
people
of the
need to-
American Eagle.
People need to know you're sitting in front of an accrue wall, brick wall, with a bulletin board that's got paper on it. You have no business talking about anybody's background.
It's
What
real,
happened to
baby.
the Marquette hat.
Later, guys.
Hat.
Oh boy. Anything else for the good of the cause? Sports
Window.
Right.
That's our sign off.
That's our sign off. All right, everybody. Much love. Thanks for joining us. And thanks for sharing space with us today. We truly hoped you enjoyed that amazing interview. Remember, everyone, Black Lives Matter. Stop the bullying. Stop the Asian hate. Contact your local and state politicians for any inequalities, for any individual or any group that's being marginalized. Also, everyone, we want to raise awareness for those individuals that are currently imprisoned for non-violent offenses, in particular those with long-term sentences that are disproportionate, in particular to those people in the Black and brown community. And I want to send a shout out to 40tons.co. 40 Tons is a socially conscious cannabis brand, and they're a social enterprise using the regulated cannabis industry to fight injustice, in particular for cannabis prisoners. So check them out again at 40, the number 4, the number 0, tons, plural, 40tons.co, because what they're doing in the cannabis space and being a socially conscious company is truly incredible, and they have my full support. And also wanted to remind all of you, if you're having a tough time, you can always call the Suicide Prevention Lifeline, and that number is 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255, and they are available 24/7, 365 days a year. You can also always check me out on Twitter, Instagram, and on TikTok at Mike Hootner. Thanks again to our amazing sponsors, Breaking Tea, Sport RX, PSK Collective, City Lokes, and Moolah Kicks, which you can see right here up on the screen. You can search them online at breakingtea.com, sportrx.com, pskcollective.com, moolahkicks.com, and citylokes.com. And if you'd like to support us at the Sports Deli, we'd love to have you either make a one-time donation or feel free to make a donation monthly, either 99 cents a month, $4.99 a month, or $9.99 a month. If you have questions about that, send me an email again to thesportsdeli@gmail.com, and I will send you the link on how you can do that. You can also find it at the bottom of every podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Link at the bottom to support the show. Please check out our website at thesportsdelipodcast.com. Make sure that we continue the conversations with regards to 3 strikes and you're out and mandatory minimums, especially people that are in jail for non-violent offenses. So those things need to change. And remember, gents and ladies, please remember to do your monthly self-breast examinations. And remember, guys, this afflicts about 1,500 men annually, with about a third of those resulting in death. So we want to make sure that we do our monthly self-breast examinations, both men and women. And guys, remember to do your self-testicular examinations every month as well. Until next time, remember, it takes a village. For Dr. J and Coach K, I'm Hootie Hoot. This has been a production of Hootie Hoot Productions. Thank you for joining us in the Sports Deli, where everyone deserves a seat at the table. Remember, it takes a village. Much love, everybody. Peace. Hey everyone, if you're still with us, we hope you enjoy these outtakes from today's podcast with Barbara Pinson Lash. Oh boy.
Looks like he shaved his head too.
Oh Jesus.
Yeah. Easy there, Billy Mills.
Hold on, I'm writing a few notes about Barbara.
Number 1, may or may not work with LeBron. Number 2, LeBron may or may not be LeBron.
I think LeBron was LeBron.
There's other LeBrons, just like there are now other Jordans,
That's true.
like Montel Jordan. That guy could rock.
Yep.
How long is today's interview?
I don't know. Probably
Okay.
30 to 45.
Okay.
She's
How-
amazing.
how-
I had no idea because all my memories in high school people are, what they are, but she is doing some really powerful stuff. Like,
Well, aren't all your high school memories fuzzy from all that drug use?
I haven't done any drugs except marijuana tincture.
Okay, hang on. Wait.
That is
let me-
being recorded too, for the record, and I
Let
don't
me-
care. It
let
was
me do-
because I had nausea after my surgery.
Let me do
so
a John
It
Lowney.
wasn't actually marijuana.
Okay.
Listen,
Okay, Mike.
listen, Gordo.
Gordo. Where's Wexler? Wawa?
He'll be on in a minute. He's probably
They're changing the canister at the 7-Eleven.
he's left the building.
You want an 80s reference? He's wheezing the juice.
Jesus Christ. So, any suggestions about how to start with Barbara?
I don't know Barbara and I haven't looked at her stuff, so I'm not the right guy.
I'm just
to
going to
ask,
start
sorry.
with, how she became involved in, if you would have asked me of anybody in high school, if anyone would have got into television or been involved with professional athletes, it would not have been her.
Well, you could ask her what her teenage interests were that transitioned into a television pathway.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like you think she had some other interests.
I mean, her and I and Rick, my best friend, hung out together all the time in what was known as the Mushrooms in the high school. I guess that was a fair name.
Was that also a tincture?
I do not like the direction of where this podcast is going today. This pandemic has gotten to your head.
Privyet.
Yet.
Privyet. Dedushka.
Wex has been longer than 2 minutes. He's having a warped sense of time. I think he's
He's
needs some
Wex.
he
Think
needs
about
some
what
tincture.
you're saying. That's like saying Wendell understands technology.
Welcome to the Sports Deli season. Have you listened to the ad?
No.
Oh, I redid the ad. It's very good. Wait, here, I'll let you listen to it later. Right? Okay, here we go. Like on the iPhone, you can't clear all when it comes to your various apps that you get rid of. On the Android, you can hit clear all and they're all gone. Very annoying.
What are you trying to get rid of?
Like if you want to get rid of all your apps at once,
All your apps? Why would you want to do that?
Well, not get rid of in literally, but like what you've been using that day. You hit the.
Oh, I see.
You hold, hard hold or long hold.
You double tap. It's a double tap on the home.
Yeah.
button.
Okay, let me see if I can figure this out here.
And you want to nuke all of them at once instead of having to swipe through.
Look at that.
What,
you can't see it.
What
We've
is it?
made 18 cents so far on our podcast since
Oh,
I
it's
put the ad up 2
fantastic.
days ago.
Tell
Yeah,
Wex his cut his 3 cents. I'll tell him.
There, yeah, you tell him.
Hey Wex.
Yeah.
Nice hat. Wait, what is that? Wait,
What's wrong?
what is that
First of
hat?
all-
Marquette? What is
Yeah.
that?
Marquette.
Wow,
First of all,
I guessed
Wax-
that it was Marquette.
Wex, were you late because they were changing the Diet Coke canister at the Wawa?
What is it
The
with the Diet
Wawa.
Coke?
He's going
What
to
is
the
it with the
Waffle
Diet
House next.
What is it with the Diet Coke?
South Carolina. He's going to the Waffle House. Why are you wearing a Marquette hat?
I went on campus one time, picked it up.
Wow.
That's all it takes. Just make one campus visit. Next thing you know, he's spending money at the bookie.
I thought it was in honor of Dwayne Wade or something.
No.
Wow.
Wex, we made 18 cents on our advertising, and your cut is your cut is 3 cents.
What do you mean? How did we make money? I'm excited.
Because I started an ad. Barbara's
Oh,
ready to come in. Are we ready to have her?
I'm not ready, but I'll get it together. I can mute myself.
I don't
What
want to
ad?
make her wait. I started an ad that we put in at the beginning of the podcast, and then it advertises Anchor.
Are you really already recording? Oh, yes, you are. So I can't tell you the story about the
Not yet.
about the
We'll wait
call
until
from my
after.
principal. All
But
right.
you have to wait until after because we last couple times I've used the pre and post discussions into the podcast, much to Windows' dismay.
In other words, I should expect a call from the FBI sometime soon, or a lawsuit from somebody I've defamed.
Exactly. All right, we'll admit her, and then we'll just say hi and do some informal hellos, and then we'll go from there. All right, here we go. Barbara, John Gordon. This is Barbara Pinson Lash.
Hi, Barbara.
Hey, Barbara.
I love the art. I love the artwork.
Thank you.
How are we doing? I don't know. I think we're doing how everybody's doing, but I'm not sure. I'm still trying to find somebody who's doing great. Are you doing great?
Yeah, actually.
Fabulous. Thank God.
I am. Can you guys
That's
hear me
all
okay? Do I need to plug in the next?
It's a little distant. Do you have something else that you want to maybe make the sound better?
Stand by.
You see that television reference she just threw at us right
She gave
there?
you a standby. She's
She
going to
gave
give
me
you
a standby.
She's going to give you a 3, 2, 1 coming back.
I feel very important right
Shooting
now.
in 5, 4,
Right.
3, 2, 1.
Now, see, you've already Wex. You don't count down 2 and 1.
We don't want
See,
Shirley
that's-
Paroka
That's
references.
just
right
visual.
now.
So it's like
Outro.
Wex. We're going in 5, 4.
Take 2.
That's how you do it.
Hold on.
Well, you forgot this part though.
I did it. I did that part.
I don't
did-
point
you
at
did.
people. I try not to point at people.
Well, 3 are pointing back at yourself, even if
Exactly.
you're pointing 1 at
It
somebody.
used to be 4, but now it's 3 because now the thumb is like now it wants its own space.
That's right.
Let's see.
So wait, John, what other campus bookstores have you been in where you've grabbed a hat? besides
Everywhere.
Marquette?
Everywhere.
Okay, you want a sound check? How about now?
Oh, that's
3,
better.
2,
That's
1.
fabulous.
That's very good.
Outstanding, and you don't have to look like a gamer like me.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. Hey, go
Wow.
ahead, girl.
There you go.
Sing it.
You should
Cool
tell her
beans.
that we're already recording, Barbara, so that she doesn't think that this is
Yes.
free
she
time
knows,
to
She knows we're
play
going
off
to
the
edit.
record. Okay, all right.
I heard it, but thank you for the heads up. So I see Gordon, and I see you've got Spartan behind you. I'm not going to hold that against you.
It's not Michigan State. Before you get too excited, I coach a high school team that has casually ripped off all of their marketing.
You should have so let me get excited. I haven't been
Oh,
excited
okay.
about that rivalry in a while.
I'm an IU guy, so you can get pissed about that if you want. Oh God, Mike.
Who's representing? Who's got that Michigan flag in the back?
Is that what
I
it
love
is? Is you a Michigan call?
Yes.
Okay. I
Come
would
on
bust
now.
out that Hebrew shirt that says Shalom in the Michigan colors. You know, the one from Ann Arbor.
Yes.
That's right.
So Gordon, nice to meet you. Wexler.
John Wexler, how are you?
Mr. John. I'm good. I'm doing actually very good.
She's writing down her
Tonight is
name
movie
straight through.
night with me and
Oh.
baby girl. So
So we got to get a move on here.
we've
What's
got
the
like a
movie?
whole thing going on downstairs with popcorn
no.
and cookies and apple slices.
Nice. What's the movie of choice?
I never know. I never
Oh.
know. She always surprises me.
Nice. Oh,
How old is baby girl?
She's 8 going on 28.
Oh,
Yes.
she's precocious, is she?
Oh my gosh, you have no idea. You think you know it until you meet her. And then you're like, gosh, I'm so glad she belongs to you.
So you'll either be watching something from Disney or Amelie.
We have been watching Disney, the Sophia series, Sophia the First, for like, I don't know, 4 or 5 days straight. We've seen it all the way to the very last episode. And so I'm excited to actually have a movie that has real humans in it. That's always my request. A movie night with mommy, we got to have some real people.
I would say a
But-
lot of people these days are binge watching a lot of things.
Oh yeah. But I have to say, like, she is the most amazing young mind. And I know she's my daughter, so I'm biased, but even our teachers will pull us aside, and her teachers will pull my husband and I aside and say, you know, your daughter is really special. She's artistic, she's intelligent, she just has this outgoing personality. So I would not trade that little thing for anything.
Cool.
I'm muting myself because the garbage truck has impeccable timing. But I want to wait until they possibly turn around and come down the other side of the street.
Really?
Yeah. Well, I mean, unless you want to start.
I can't hear the garbage truck in your mic, by the way.
You guys can't hear
Nor
it?
can I. Mm-mm.
Oh. All right.
It's all you, dude.
All right. Let's rock and roll. We'll count it down, and we'll get this thing rocking and rolling. All right. 3.
Go Spartans.
Go Spartans. You're really trying to
I'm
start.
going to be
this off.
talking to John, I can see tonight. John
That's
and
right.
Michael.
That's right. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Sports Deli, along with Gordon Kaplan, Coach K, and Coach John. We're gonna call you Coach tonight, John.
Okay.
How do you like that?
I can handle it.
Okay.
I'm not calling him coach. I can't even get people to call me coach.
All right, now we're for real. That was take 1. All right, take 2. Here we go. See what I did there? That was good. See, I got the whole TV thing down. I'm ready. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1.